My favorite story in the book is the one of the first family we know of, and the footprints going back 3.5 million years ago. And you said it was seemingly in their nature to care about each other. And I won't go into the story too much because people can read it for themselves. But what can that very first family we know of teach us about family and the importance of love?
I've always been amazed, fascinated, and reassured by the idea that there have been various different forms of humankind. That, you know, we've ended up being the last human apes on planet Earth, and we've been here about 250,000 years. But there have been Neanderthals before us, and Homo heidelbergensis, Homo erectus, and a whole line of shadowy characters going back into the past. It appears that I think we're aware of as many as a dozen different kinds of human being that has either sometimes they've cohabited and now we've ended up alone. And there are recognizable behaviors that we can see in all of them. You know, the Neanderthals cared for their dead. They worked collaboratively as teams. And then you go back to, you're talking about what's called the first family, and it's a set of footprints fossilized in volcanic ash from 3.5 million years ago in Tanzania, the Laetoli footprints. Now, they were made by Australopithecus africanus, the southern ape. They're so far back in the family tree that they don't even get the epithet Homo. They're not classed as human, but nonetheless, they're in our ancestral line. We have inherited some of what we are from the Australopithecines. Much smaller than us, much smaller brains. You know, we would look at them and see them as being closer to apes than us, probably. But nonetheless, they were on their way. They were using tools. They were functioning. And the fact is, the Laetoli footprints, as they were interpreted by a paleoanthropologist called Mary Leakey, seem to suggest two adults and a child walking together. And it's hard not to imagine them walking hand in hand, the way your mind's eye pictures them. And there's a suggestion that one of the adults broke away from the pair for a while, checked something that was bothering her, and Mary Leakey imagined it was the mother, and then rejoined the group. And she said this was a moment of doubt, that a mother, together with her partner and her child, she was bothered about something, had to go and have a look, and having reassured herself, she came back. So that was 3.5 million years ago. A shadowy ancestor demonstrates the importance of looking out for the other people in the group. You know, she took herself away to reassure herself that the threat was not real, and then came back. And I think there's something amazingly reassuring about knowing that, along with other characteristics, we have somehow inherited that fundamental building block, which is the importance of family. In the lockdown, so much was stripped away for people. You know, people had to stay off work and they were restricted to their homes for 23 hours a day and all the rest of it. How quickly did it become, for most people, about family? And being anxious about family we couldn't see, you know, mums and dads or grandparents or whatever, were suddenly isolated from them. So people stopped worrying so much about, you know, the football leagues or the Kardashians or a whole host of other ephemera. And it was suddenly all about, is everyone all right? Have we got enough food? Do we have enough tinned tomatoes and toilet roll to get us through the week? So these moments, the lockdown's been very instructive as well as destructive, but it's been a reminder that very quickly, what is it that people are preoccupied with? Their kids, their mum. And that's the way it's been for 3.5 million years at least.
I love this idea of love being ancient, because you hear a lot of people talking about how love is just this concept we've made up. But another story I loved is this 50,000-year-old funeral before speech was even a thing. And the quote you used was beautiful. Love was there before the word. How does this make you reflect on human nature and love? And does it tell us that it is, you know, it is within us to love and be loved?
Oh, I try to be an optimist. I think as well as this sort of Solzhenitsyn good and evil, I think in reality most of us have optimist and pessimist living inside us as well. You know, the pessimists there trying to, you know, pull us down. Optimists there trying to lift us up. And I try to be optimistic. And I think that the evidence, the archaeological evidence is there that can be interpreted as demonstrations of love. You know, you're talking about a couple of burials of Neanderthals in a cave in Iraq. There's also the Mesolithic, the Middle Stone Age mother and baby buried together at a place called Vedbæk, which is modern day Copenhagen in Denmark. A beautifully elegant and careful burial of a mother and an infant. And there's just no doubt that what you're excavating there, along with the stones and the bones, is love. And likewise, in the case of those Neanderthals, one of those Neanderthals seems to have been laid in a grave and then covered over with cut flowers. Now, how else can you interpret a gesture like that but as being grief and love? And I get a huge amount from you might, whatever you think about love, it's easy to dismiss it or to think of it as being an ephemeral human emotion that kind of comes and goes like a flash of sunlight. But the fact is, if we can excavate it out of the ground after 10,000 years or after 50,000 years, that suggests that ephemeral, although it may appear, love lasts because we see it in the way that the ancestors treated one another. And it's important to me to remember all the time that the worlds that those ancestors inhabited were unimaginably different from ours. They had nothing of the kit that we take for granted, nothing of the scientific understanding that we build our lives upon. They had every meal they ate had to be gathered or hunted down and killed. Every fire had to be kindled. They had to think about shelter, death and injury were ever present threats. And yet, in the face of those hard, demanding, short lives, again and again, they express the fact that they're thinking big thoughts. You know, it's there in the cave art, underground in places like France and Spain, and here in Britain, that people, in the midst of those incredibly demanding circumstances, some of them still took it upon themselves to go and make some of the greatest art that the world has ever seen. They weren't worn down to animal and brutish by their harsh circumstances. On the contrary, at least for moments here and there, they were elevated to acts of love, acts of artistic achievement, looking up at the stars and the planets and trying to comprehend their place as fragile human beings in the scheme of the cosmos. You see archaeologically that people were taking the time to ask those questions and come up with elegant answers. And so it says to me that the very least we can do with all that we have is something similar. You know, be elegant and graceful and thoughtful in the face of life and death.